Friday, October 24th, 2025, AGNDD intelliReport topic. The God of Madness is back with a vengeance. Please pardon any visual and informational inaccuracies in this entirely AI-generated article-based video. The God of Madness is back with a vengeance. This article is taken entirely from Medium.com by Jeff Ward, March 30th, 2023. The world's gone mad. How often do we hear this exclamation today? In his essay on Wotan, first published in 1936, Jung wrote that because the behavior of a race takes its specific character from its underlying images, one can speak of Wotan as an archetype in the collective unconscious. As an autonomous psychic factor, Wotan produces effects in the collective life of a people and thereby reveals his own nature. In Jungian depth psychology, archetypes are inherited, innate a priori modes of perception, linked to instincts which regulate perception itself. They are primordial ideas or tendencies common to the human race, and convey themselves through archetypal images. They function autonomously from the unconscious and are charged with emotion. Mythological figures, gods and demons, are archetypal. Wotan, or Odin in Old Norse, was a supremely venerated god in Germanic mythology and paganism, and known in Old English as Woden, deriving from the Proto-Germanic theonym or deity name Wodanaz, which means Lord of Frenzy or Leader of the Possessed. According to Jung, in The Symbolic Life, Collected Works, Volume 18, the greatest threat to civilization lies not in the forces of nature, nor with any physical disease, but with our inability to deal with the forces of our own psyche. Indeed, it is becoming ever more obvious that it is not famine, not earthquakes, not microbes, not cancer, but man himself who is man's greatest danger to man, for the simple reason that there is no adequate protection against psychic epidemics which are infinitely more devastating than the worst of natural catastrophes. The Latin proverb, "Man is wolf to man," Jung writes in Civilization in Transition, Collected Works, Vol. 10, is a sad yet eternal truism, and our wolf-like tendencies come most prominently into play at those times of history when mental illness becomes the norm rather than the exception in a society, a situation which Jung termed a psychic epidemic. The tide of tyranny. So what is it about today that suggests to me that Wotan, the god of madness and derangement, is again on the ascendant? As I wrote in my most recent article, can the West turn the tide of tyranny? The major threat to the free world today is the curtailment of established freedoms under a creeping totalitarianism, not pandemic, not climate change, not even nuclear war in themselves. We see the threat at governmental level, both national and local, where sectors of the body politic do appear to be possessed by a sinister ideology. Proliferating proposals for population surveillance and control, digital ID, digital currency, vaccine passports, smart cities, 15-minute cities, with consequential loss of privacy. Censorship and the erosion of freedom of speech and expression, insistence on establishment narrative and orthodoxy, however illogical. The stifling of debate across all sectors, notably in science and medicine. Interference with farming and food production. Net zero fanaticism and the vehemence of wokeism and cancel culture. And not least in the overreaching hubris of the unelected World Economic Forum and World Health Organization and their blatant bids for global dominance. It's quite a list, isn't it? The seeming frenzy of this movement holds in contempt ordinary people's lives and livelihoods. It threatens an unholy combination of Chinese-style communism and neo-fascist meritocracy arising from technocratic and corporatocratic obsession. The strong possibility that financial inducement from wealthy elites is behind much of it only plays into Wotan's hands. As I've already stated, unless something can be done to turn the tide, today's new orthodoxy, cemented during the COVID-19 episode of 2020-21, heralds the rise of the technocratic totalitarian state, possibly a world technocratic totalitarian state, ushered in under the cover of spurious and ultimately despotic pandemic and climate policies, which their proponents try to make unchallengeable by crushing oppositional viewpoints and deplatforming, aided by the complicit mainstream media. Wider recognition of this increasingly ominous situation and the building of popular resilience and resistance to it is urgently needed, lest populations succumb under what the Belgian psychologist Matthias Desmet, in the context of COVID-19, has called mass formation. When whole populations underwent a kind of collective hypnosis arising, in his view, from fear, loneliness, and free-floating anxiety which attached itself to the event, giving way to censorship, diminished privacy, and surrendered freedoms. The Psychology of Totalitarianism, Chelsea Green Publishing, 2022. Note: Matthias Desmet is a professor of clinical psychology in the Department of Psychology and Educational Sciences at Ghent University, Belgium, and a practicing psychotherapist. He has also written The Pursuit of Objectivity in Psychology and Lacan's Logic of Subjectivity, A Walk on the Graph of Desire, and he is the author of more than 100 peer-reviewed academic papers. In 2018, he received the Evidence-Based Psychoanalytic Case Study Prize of the Association for Psychoanalytic Psychotherapy, and in 2019 he received the Wim Treesberg Prize of the Dutch Association of Psychotherapy. Prof. Desmet writes, "The fact that the human being is like a flower that only blooms when it can enjoy the shade of privacy once in a while is of minor importance in a technocratic worldview. Anyone who refuses to go along with the system lacks civic sense and considers oneself more important than the collective. Your health is no longer your personal business because some diseases are contagious." One can see how Professor Desmet's theory of mass formation bears a relation to Jung's notion of psychic epidemic. Just 9 months before his death, Jung, in a letter to the Chilean diplomat Miguel Serrano, dated September 14, 1960, wrote, "When, for instance, the belief in the god Wotan vanished and nobody thought of him anymore, the phenomenon originally called Wotan remained. Nothing changed but its name as National Socialism demonstrated on a grand scale. Wotan never died. A collective movement consists of millions of individuals, each of whom shows the symptoms of Wotanism and proves thereby that Wotan, in reality, never died but has retained his original vitality and autonomy. Our consciousness only imagines it has lost its gods. In reality, they are still there, and it only needs a certain general condition in order to bring them back in full force. This condition is a situation in which a new orientation and adaptation is needed. If this question is not clearly understood and no proper answer is given, the archetype, which expresses this situation, steps in and brings back the reaction which has always characterized such times, in this case, Wotan. As only certain individuals are capable of listening and of accepting good advice, it is most unlikely that anybody would pay attention to the statement of a warning voice that Wotan is here again. They would rather fall headlong into the trap. As we have largely lost our gods, and the actual condition of our religion does not offer an efficacious answer to the world situation in general, and to the religion of communism in particular, we are very much in the same predicament as the pre-National Socialistic Germany of the 20s, that is, we are apt to undergo the risk of a further but this time worldwide Wotanistic experiment. One does not realize yet that when an archetype is unconsciously constellated and not consciously understood, one is possessed by it and forced to its fatal goal. Wotan then represents and formulates our ultimate principle of behavior. In the essay on Wotan, Jung asserts that all human control comes to an end when the individual is caught in a mass movement. Then the archetypes begin to function, as happens also in the lives of individuals when they are confronted with situations that cannot be dealt with in any familiar ways. What a Führer could do with a mass movement was seen plainly in Hitler's Germany and Mussolini's Italy. Jung continues, "We are driven to conclude that Wotan must in time reveal not only the restless, violent, stormy side of his character, but also his ecstatic and mantic qualities, a very different aspect of his nature. If this conclusion is correct, National Socialism would not be the last word. When a mass psychosis takes place, it wreaks havoc. People, Jung wrote, in the symbolic life become morally and spiritually inferior. They sink unconsciously to an inferior intellectual level. They become more unreasonable, irresponsible, emotional, erratic, and unreliable. And even crimes the individual alone could never stand are freely committed by the group, smitten by madness. In other words, the world goes mad. Written by Jeff Ward, writer, journalist, book editor, poet, musician, and tutor in literature and creative writing, M.A. and B.A. Hans degrees in English literature.
Thank you for watching this AGNDD intelliReport, dear viewers. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell button to get notified during new uploads. And make sure to tune in next time. Stay safe and healthy. Cheers.